Welcome to Talk with Tara, the podcast where we dive into the bold, the funny, and the fascinating. I'm Tara, your host, bringing you unfiltered conversation on life, love, and everything in between. Hit that follow button so you're always in the loop. Let's get started. I have Joy Nordenstrom here today of Joy of Romance and Intelligent Love. She has 20 years of experience as a certified matchmaker and relationship mentor. She helps singles find love and couples build lasting connections. As the founder of Joy of Romance and Intelligent Love, she combines science, intuition, and practical wisdom to guide clients in understanding their relationship blueprint, helping them choose wisely and create thriving partnerships. Beyond coaching, Joy hosts Devoured, a playful dating event series, and is passionate about preserving love stories through her Forever and Ever project. Based in San Francisco, in the Bay Area, but services her clients internationally. Joy shares her life with her husband, son, and 3 kids. Welcome, Joy.
I'm so excited to be here, Tara. I'm really delighted that you've invited me. And it's really rainy out today, so hopefully you can hear me consistently.
Yeah, I guess it's not always sunny in California, right? Today we're facing this big, huge atmospheric rainstorm. So if you hear Joy's rain, the sound of rain is beautiful. Okay, so let's get started, Joy. I'd like to know how you got into this business.
Very interesting story. The end of 10 years of being with my then husband, we were married for 7 years. We started hitting some epic bumps in the road over the past years. And I thought, I really want to get back to the good stuff. I know it was good. I wouldn't have gone into it for this long. And I went searching. It was either religious-based ways to try to fix your marriage or therapy. And at that time, the religious didn't work. So we tried therapy. And I knew better. Whatever you're concentrating on, whatever you're dwelling on is increasing, not decreasing. So it actually made it worse. And so I decided that I really wanted to try to fix it. He ended it very abruptly. And I already had this in my mind. And I had actually found the URL, Joy of Romance. Prior to being with my husband, I had been a serial entrepreneur. And I thought, yeah, I'll always love love. Maybe I'll do that someday. Yeah, and it kind of tossed me into it right around the same time as he ended it. My undergrad professor, who I TA'd for in economics, called me up and said, "Hey, Joy, we're starting the MBA program. I'd love to take you out to lunch. You have a double major, double minor. You can probably finish this in a year." And I said, "Wonderful timing. I'd like to write the business plan for this new company." And I also really wanted to dive into the fact that women talk about relationships 24/7. It's just innate in us. But men, I felt, were really truncated in their ability to communicate around emotions and relationships. And I love that science was finally catching up with self-help books to let us know what really, through science, was making us either thrive or what was causing that demise. And so I felt if I could reach men with the Joy of Romance and really tap into that I would be able to then reel them in, help them really become integrated. So I started out with my MBA program, wrote the business plan, spent a whole year hosting classes and events. And then throughout that year, traversed the globe over to go to my favorite coaches, authors, therapists, neuroscientists, biologists, social anthropologists. I created what I called the Love Council, even met with this gentleman and trained with him who created the facial action coding system so that I could really have that infrastructure. And then what I saw was there was certain patterns that we all have in relationship. And if you stack them together and at least look at the first top 10, I called that the relationship blueprint. You want to really understand which of these are core to who I am, and they're not going to shift because I was probably born with them and innately came in within the first 3 years and established them, or look at which ones are oil and water combinations in between themselves. And that might be really confusing when you're getting into a relationship, because even if we don't know the names of these, we are seriously learning somebody and starting to put understanding about who they are and looking down the path with them. And then we're also looking at weak links, because some of these were not perfect when it comes to being a partner in a relationship. If we can understand those weak links early, we can actually forewarn somebody of what those are. And if we can do that in such a way that we can empower them if that comes up, and let them know 95% of the time I'm up here. This is who I want to be. This is who I'm striving to be. But when I get stressed out and I'm on autopilot, that might be my default. If I did that, it would look like, sound like, feel like this for you. Here are some tools to help pump my brakes, pattern interrupt me, get me back to center so that I can be better in the future. But don't hold my feet to the fire and, look at me as my higher self, not as this weak link. And if you can empower somebody with like a guidebook on how to work with you from the very beginning, you're going to set yourself up for doing much better. And then also understanding, I worked backwards from why most people got divorced and the relationships ended. One of those love council members his name was Dr. John Gottman, and his wife Julie started the Gottman Institute.
Right.
And he said, his first big study was about anger and frustration in a relationship. And he called them the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse.
Mm-hmm.
And so by the time you hit those and you went down this downward slope with them and you got to something called stonewalling, he said, man, I just didn't see people coming back from that. They were basically looking for somebody in a setting like a counseling session. That person would say, yeah, this isn't working so well. See, I told you so, gotta go. And they would look for next. Stonewalling is when somebody basically 3 different things. They'll either totally abruptly change the subject if you've said something that you're concerned about. They can get really monotone in that situation, or they can just totally ignore you, or they could walk out of the room. And so it's so infuriating for the person who's trying to convey something that's emotional, and upsetting to them to have this person just checked out. And men do it typically more than women because men get flooded with these cortisol super quickly when they're frustrated, and it actually makes them feel like they're drunk. It hits them so hard and it stays in their system so much longer that they are doing their best. They don't like that feeling of being out of control by any means because they're, they like having the reins and being in charge. And when that happens, what's happening is they're just not able to be in that moment. So stonewalling is their way to like defense themselves to not get flooded. So
do men do it more than women, you would say?
Yeah. And if a gentleman has been trained to do it and he jumps into stonewalling right away, it's something that can easily be course corrected, somewhat easily. But if he went succinctly each of the steps to get to stonewalling, then he's going to have a challenge. So criticism, defensiveness, contempt, and then getting to stonewalling, then he's really looking for a way out. He's not looking to repair. However, Gottman said the work of Dr. Sue Johnson, and she came up with a series of questions that she could ask to get people back to their good, happy place. And he said that was the only person that he was seeing that had some methodology. So I went and studied with her. And what I saw was if somebody had chosen wisely and they actually had a really loving, thriving relationship in the beginning, they created a solid foundation that when they hit those inevitable bumps in the road, if they did this methodology, they could get back to the happy place. If they did not choose wisely, it wouldn't work. So my mission really became with Joy of Romance is how do I teach people how to choose wisely? Because that's the first step. And even before that is how do I understand myself so I know how to choose wisely? And then how do I know how to put that solid foundation down really from the very beginning within the first month or so? You're establishing this because those habits that you create then will be what makes you go into a happily ever after or what could cause the demise and start causing that little crack that opens and opens. So it's really important to understand that.
I think what makes your approach different is that you have the science and methodology behind the way you go about dating and matchmaking and couples therapy, basically. You have a methodology versus you're just not fixing people up. You're really working with their past, their future, just creating the whole recipe for love.
Indeed. And I love it. I call it the life cycle of relationships. And so if I can catch you when you're single, this is the best place. Even if you had just gotten out of something, you're not ready to start dating yet, start doing the work, start learning about your patterns, start understanding about that blueprint, because some of the patterns you're going to be looking for, you want the polar opposite. And some of them, you want them to be in sync with one another. And I hate that adage of people go figure yourself out and take some time to like learn from that past relationship. And people are like, what does that mean? Right. How do I do that? So I really wanted to dial in on, no, I know how that works. And I can teach you a really solid method so that you want, when you're done going through the journey, and up until this point, I've only been working one-on-one or one-on-two, except for some workshops and conferences, but I'm about ready to move with Intelligent Love into reaching the masses and doing cohort community-based courses, which I'm really excited about so that I can get out to more people. Yeah, but with this one-on-one and one-on-two, if people can start understanding who they are when they're single in particular, they can go, okay, I've got enough of this understanding of how to ask the right questions, how to even ask questions of their friends and their family and the people in their community to see if I'm getting a consistency between word and action in this individual. And so I know which ones to ask good questions to figure out, are you close? Are you doing this polar opposite dance with me? And then I help them create what's called their love is statement from all these deep dive questions and the various patterns. And so typically that's 2 columns, 9, 10-point type, and it's diving into 10s, 9s, 8s, and 7s of it being weighted of the things that I really want is either a behavioral-based pattern or a trait or something that I want to co-create as a we. So the combination of the litmus test, it's a litmus test of this love is statement and the basic profile. And then you have that, and I would say, choose a couple friends that you really trust, that really have your back, and say, I want to sit down with you and really give you the deep dive of what it is that I'm looking for in a potential partner as they're coming in. Because I know when I first start falling, or I like to say rising in love, my brain is going to be flooded with all these chemicals in such a way that the blinders go on like you're a racehorse.
Right. Right.
So most people are going to get just an elevator pitch of this information because it's too much. But if you have some people who really have a good read on people and got your back, go to them. Because
what are sorry to interrupt, but what are a couple of the questions? Like, can you give us an example of questions that you may ask?
Yeah, well,
around you.
I would say, hey, I would love to share with you my relationship blueprint, these top 10 relationship patterns, give you a little background of what they mean and which ones I'm looking, what that translates to the patterns I'm looking for in a partner. And so based on that, we come up with some questions that you could ask them. And then you have this beautiful list of things that are most important in the traits and the behaviors, and then what I want to co-create as this beautiful dance. Hopefully one of these people might be in a good relationship themselves, so they have a good solid understanding of what works. Mm-hmm. And again, there's no one size fits all, but if you can help them understand, and some of those core, principles are there, is this a nice person? Is this a thoughtful, kind person? Is this person have a growth mindset? That's often very important, especially if you're what's called an explorer. And so I would say it's happened to me so many times where people come up to me after I've broken up with somebody and they say, oh my gosh, that person did this or that, or I heard them say this, or oh man, I never really liked them because of this. And I'm like, why did you tell me that in the beginning? It was really pertinent information, and I probably would have not lost as much time in this relationship if you had come to me. And again, time and time, they said, it wasn't my place. I felt you were happy. I was uncomfortable. And I just knew the people even super duper close to me, like adopted moms and whatnot, hadn't spoken up. So I thought, if I can, again, reverse engineering this, go to them in advance, give them some information, say, when I bring this person around, don't be nicey nice to them, really dive in and get my back. You need to be a private investigator for my heart, because I'm going to be looking like I'm on cocaine, and I'm going to come back to you and I'm going to say, I might not do exactly what you want me to do with this information, but I'm definitely going to pay attention. And I so appreciate that you're taking the time and energy to tell me what you thought about the person. And I might have them come back a couple times before the two of them to connect with that person before I go back and ask for that information. But with it, then I get to make my choice. Is this something that I can bring back to the person if it's a little bit off? Can I learn more about it? But it's very important information. You're collecting this in the beginning when you're first starting to date someone.
Well, what happens if somebody comes to you and they're already involved and they already love the person? So what do you do then?
It's so much harder. Yeah. That would be like getting professional help at that time, because so many people giving advice when shit's hitting the fan, it just seems polarizing. And most of the time the person doesn't know how to navigate and what's going on. And there's so many moving pieces, but After 20 years, I can see from this big umbrella perspective, and then I can see where we need to do those deep dives. But if there's already challenges happening, what happens is defenses are up. And you can't learn anything when your defenses are up. You have to work with somebody to bring them back into a safe, secure place. Like that work of Sue Johnson I was saying in the beginning. She helps them come back to those happy places by going through a series of questions with them. And if you can do that in advance and you can see where those weak links are, you've already identified them. One of the ways that I help people understand and calibrate what happened in their past and how it's impacting their ability to bring in the right partner and then to co-create that living, thriving relationship is I have a kinesiologist figure out how a certain thing that's off, how much it's affecting your body. So I have them list all the different stories of things that had happened in their past from the time of in utero all the way to the top without telling me about them because I don't need to, I'm not a therapist, don't need to go into all of them. We neutralize the title so they're very basic. Nobody would get triggered by the particular word in the title. And then I have them go to a kinesiologist and test this in conjunction, again, with their ability to bring in and maintain a loving, thriving relationship. You could test these against your ability to have a great career, to make money, to lose weight. All of those different things could be playing in because what happens is our body in a scary situation goes, I need to keep that person alive. And so prior to 23, we'll go into fight, flight, disassociate, or fawn to be able to make the right choice to keep the body alive. Unfortunately, then your body starts looking for more evidence of that and then doubles up on it. So it becomes stronger and stronger. And of the core self-limiting beliefs, we usually hold at least one, if not all 7 of them in our body. And so we want to make sure that we know that and we go, okay, that happened. I'm having empathy for myself. And because that shitty thing happened, I actually now have an ability to rise above that and become the better version of myself because I'm choosing to lean into love and faith instead of fear in those situations. But it's so hard. And most talk therapy we saw through science over the last 10 years was truncated because it only got to that place where here, something's wrong. We went and we figured out where it came from. We inoculated you to it by talking about it. We've given you some great tools on next time it happens. And then it happens and it happens again and it happens again. And you're like, I don't know why I didn't use the tools. You can't. Right. Your brain is hijacked in those moments.
Right.
You can't see it. Actually, part of your brain might be completely not working and not functional at that time. It looks like people sometimes have Asperger's because another one of my teachers put people into an fMRI during that time to watch what was happening. And sure enough, somebody who could be really emotionally intelligent right here when everything's sunny and rosy, as soon as the shit hits the fan, they lose their ability to do that. So if
I do that. I'm very reactive. And then when I'm reactive, that's why I meditate because it really helps me kind of stop and have a second between the reactivity and actually going to do something. It really has helped me do that. But when you're reactive, you're not thinking. You just want to act. You just want to do something to kind of pacify your emotions.
Yeah. Take care of your body because do you think this could be the end of the world as we know it in, not logical ways? But if somebody that you care about, you can explain, hey, I might do this because this happened. And I know this is the I am, this is who I want to be most of the time. Would you kindly not hold my feet to the fire and call me that, I'm that again, but just go, hey, she gave me a tool to use. She asked me to do this or that to help remind her. And if you've granted permission to this person during those times, it's going to help you because it'll be a pattern interrupt you can't do yourself. So I really think that when you're with a partner, it's an evolved spiritual journey that you can do to become a better individual and better as a unit, as a we. I call that we your first baby. So it's so wonderful if you can start early to lay that foundation.
Okay, I have a couple questions. First of all, can you tell our listeners what limiting beliefs are? Because not everyone may know what a limiting belief is.
Yeah, being stuck in I'm bad, I'm not good enough, I'm alone, I'm those negative things that come up in that self-talk that you have in the back of your head. And they can be a variety of different iterations of that, but it's taking you in that downward register of not feeling like your best self, but your worst self.
How do you conquer those limiting beliefs? What are some tips for our listeners when they're saying, I'm going to end up alone and be lonely? How do they conquer that?
Yeah. So most of the time people would have to go and do tons and tons of therapy on this.
Okay.
I was very excited that I had been asked, it was about 7 years ago now, 2 gentlemen who were writing a book. And these guys were so awesome. They had created the #1 PTSD reduction workshop that was taught at the Pentagon. They had won all sorts of different awards, and they had really cool science behind what they were doing. And they wanted me to be the 3rd author in this book that they were working on. And I got to read so much literature, and I love the science, as you know. Same time, I was on a family camping trip. I jumped off of boat when wake came, and my flip-flop hit the rock, and I wound up cracking all of my metatarsals. Thank goodness I had tequila in my bag. I just told everybody else, go hiking. I didn't know how bad it was. But anyway, I was slowed down for a bit, and my son and I went to a Walgreens one day, and there was this book right there. And my son said, little 5-year-old, hey, Mom, that has your name in it. And I looked at it. It was the methodology that I now use, taught by Cedars-Sinai and La Jolla, chief scientist of psychology. And they really said one day when they were at lunch, look, we know that the patients who are doing some sort of alternative therapy seem to be getting better faster than the ones that are just working with us. It's time for us to do some science behind that. And they thin sliced all 7 different modalities that they found, and they took 4 of those components and put them together. And that became this rapid way to help you identify. And so that's what I'm doing with my clients. It usually takes 3 sessions to do, where we identify all of these stories. We do the muscle testing. We come back and we then dive into 7 to 10 that came up really high, or the ones that bottomed out and went to 0, like somebody totally checked out. And then from that understanding and diving into the limiting beliefs, they identify which ones they think are attached to that. And then we create their new I am statements of who they're evolving into. And then I help them with some guided visualization and through hypnotherapy and create 3 meditations for them, a grounding meditation, a clearing meditation, and the adding in of the I ams. And when I first learned this, I'm like, it's too easy. This can't really work, but I'm like, but I know the science behind it. So actually it probably could. And for me, my biggest thing was because I knew about Sue Johnson's work, I'm going back to the fact that I get a list of all the shitty things that happen to them, and they admit that that's affecting them, and they admit that they want to be a better person when they're undefended, when they're in the happy space. That was gold. Because I know eventually you're going to get into some bump in the road with your partner, and I have this list. If I can get them to do this list when they're happy, then we can go, look, those are those 2 little kids throwing sand in the sandbox at each other. It's not who you want to be. That's you jumping into your fear-based place and not being present in the moment. And normally, have you ever noticed in an argument with a partner that one person has their wits about them more than the other?
Yeah, of course.
So if you can have the person with their wits about them hold that look about them and go, I'm looking at you. And even the way that you're looking at somebody, when you're looking at them, your mirror neurons sync up and your spindle cells connect, and whatever's going on in the back of your mind is being broadcast like you have a megaphone yelling at them. So even if you're looking at them and you think you're smiling, you're doing, it's called the Pan Am, the Duchenne smile, but you can't change them in that moment. You have to look at them like, oh, that poor little kid got hurt in the sandbox, and I want to see them as their higher self. That in and of itself helps pump the brakes for your partner, not to be reactive and not to go in a downward spiral with you. And you should learn to step away from that moment. I have a whole protocol that I help people with dealing with conflict based, again, as much as possible on their individual blueprints on how they're going to be handling conflict. And once you have that dialed in, you are 95% dialed in not to get divorced if you've chosen wisely and you know how to put that foundation in.
Okay, I have another question. We talked about the blueprint, and I was thinking, you looked at these values like kindness, trust, liability, these things that are really great. What about when women are not attracted to that? They have chemistry and they trauma bond with the people that aren't right for them. So are you saying that when we meet someone, we shouldn't have chemistry with them? Or what are your thoughts on chemistry? Because maybe what I'm taking from this is the people that we don't have a lot of chemistry are probably the better choices.
Very, very good question. And I always start with you're attracted first to what somebody looks like. So when I studied with, his name is Dr. Paul Ekman, really great television show, if you haven't seen it, called Lie to Me. And he was the scientific advisor for it. And he helps go into different types of law enforcement and teach them lie detection. But he went across the globe to recognize the universal language was emotions. And they come through in the way in which we express emotions that are, if we do it over and over again, it's going to leave traces in our look that we have. Then I went in and studied Chinese facial reading and a bunch of offshoots of that. And then the work of Dr. Helen Fisher with her chemistry work. And so when I am working as, I call myself a private investigator for my clients' hearts as a matchmaker, I will have them send me 10 to 15 images of people that they have been in relationship with or they find very attractive who are not models or actors, real people. And then they send me 10 who are good-looking people who their good friend might like, but there's just something off. Like, man, they couldn't see themselves kissing that person. But they can say, that's an attractive person, just not my cup of tea.
Right.
And I will go through and I'll do, it's called your lens analysis, where I break down some of the components of who that person is and why you like what you like. But we're all different. And I think that's one of the things in 20 years that I've found is you have to start with, does this person want to kiss this person?
Right.
You can't make somebody want to kiss somebody. You can evolve and then spark something and then eventually want to kiss them. But you had to have not at least been repulsed by the thought.
Hear my girlfriends say when they're dating, they say, oh, I couldn't kiss him. So
Yes.
he's out. And that's kind of like the test. I couldn't kiss him. If they can kiss him, they can imagine kissing him.
Yeah.
The guy has a chance.
I used to say if you have a 65% desire to kiss the person, then you should be able to go out, on another date with them. I had this gentleman who was 83 years young, who was an Italian, super good looking, so sweet, super successful artist, correct me. And he said, Joy, if I have a 65% desire to kiss them anywhere and everywhere, then I'll go on a next date with them.
Oh, that's cute. What about trauma bonding?
Yeah, trauma bonding is going to come back with understanding where those weak links are.
Okay.
Because if you come in, that's going to be one of the ones that will show up in one of your weak links. And then we do some research into where did it come from? Is that something that you probably saw in past relationship or it was ingrained because of a past, like witnessing actually of your parents or something that happened when you were younger or in one of those early relationships, but usually it's when you're much younger. And you can go, hey, I'm going into autopilot to do this. This is not my best self. What is my true goal? My true goal is happily ever after. And if I have a family, to have a good dad, what is most important in that? And then you can start seeing when you put the spotlight on different things, where those weak links are coming out. And again, how do I start working on it myself before somebody comes in? And then once I've found somebody who is worthwhile, how do I gift them with that information? I also want to say you never want to gift somebody with this very important information before vetting them to see if they are part of the dark triad, super narcissistic, Machiavellian. They have some sort of disorder that is keeping them from being able to be a really empathetic human being.
Right. Okay. That's a good tip. Well, I have a question for you. When women are separating and they're out there in midlife and they hear things like, oh, all the good ones are taken, or dating pool is so small, or they all want 20 years younger. What do you tell women who come to you? You counsel a lot of men. So what is the male perspective on this? I mean, are there good ones out there?
Yeah, most definitely there are good ones out there. And I would say I work with about 75% gentlemen, which is pretty unusual for people in this field, and 25 plus of females. So we are looking at the fact that it starts with your mentality. And so if you're thinking there's a scarcity pool, if you're thinking that they only go for those younger ones, that's what you're going to keep looking for evidence for. So even from a scientific perspective, knock it off. So I say, go to your friends. I used to co-commiserate with you about this. And if you say these things to me now, it's really not behooving my greater purpose. I'm going to ask you not to talk about that with me. I'm going to course correct that statement and say it the way that I want it, because I only need one person.
Right.
And it's about me getting in the right mindset to be able to see that person when they come into my vicinity. And if I'm thinking scarcity, I don't see them. They could walk right in front of me and say hi, and I probably wouldn't even get it until I was in my car and going, oh, shoot, I was supposed to respond to that and be there, present in that moment to be able to engage with them. So the more that you can get really, really dialed into who is this person that is going to be the best fit for me. And I'm not looking for perfection. I want you to find 75% match of what you're looking for,
Okay.
75% match of what he's looking for. Look, if it's a male, female, looking at this 25% and go, making sure these are not a part of my deal breakers or my must-haves, and being able very early on to have a conversation about the things that are potentially off or anything that's off. I'm one of the weird dating coaches, relationship coaches that says in the beginning, I want every pet peeve talked about. I want you to learn how to talk about things that are difficult immediately when those love drugs are high in a way, if you can understand your blueprint, there's certain ways in which to do this. So important.
So when women are getting out there, and they're trying to meet people, we hear things like, oh, you have to go online. Like people aren't meeting people at restaurants or bars anymore. What are some advice on how to meet new people, both men and women?
Yes. So number one, as much as possible, do that foundational work. So you understand your patterns, you understand that relationship blueprint that comes with that, and your love is, so that you know from this, who is that person? Where would he be hanging out? One of the last exercises I do in the journey with my single clients is acting as if they're chief marketing director, and this is your avatar. And we go through 50 different questions so that you can be more aware of being in the vicinity of a gentleman like that, if it's a female to a male. And you want to go, okay, where should I be hanging out? I probably shouldn't be hanging out in yoga as much as I should be taking a class on investing. Should I be, what kind of car does he drive? Even when I first started, one of my favorite advice to give women in Marin, I was friends with the president or founder of the Mercedes dealership, and he was taking a class. We actually happened to take the same class at the same time. And I said, Frank, do you mind if I send the women to your cafe to have cup of coffee or tea just in between their meetings during the day or just to hang out? And so women would come, and they knew that gentlemen would probably have a certain amount of income or that they were established if they had that type of car. And I can't tell you how many women got dates from just hanging out.
Oh my gosh, how interesting. I would have never thought of that.
Right. So you're just going, okay, where are they? And then who do I know that knows them? And who do I get to have that conversation? I call my people who are scouting for me love agents and secret love agents. And I have an army of over 600 people internationally now who are out there. And once we've dialed in on who this person is, I go, who knows that person?
Right.
Let me get to that person and ask them to start scouting. And so you can use the online dating apps as a tool. It's really a job. And now 96% of the people claim they're lying on there. So it's annoying to have to do all the due diligence that you have to.
Right.
But I would go in, I would have your love is, I would make sure that you knew what you were doing to get the most out of that time and energy, put a strategy together and find maybe up to 9 potential candidates. Do whatever you can to weed them out before you waste your time going to meet them, but get them off the platform as quickly as possible onto a phone call. I wouldn't even do FaceTime because chemistry-wise, you actually miss some things when you're meeting for the first time via FaceTime. Meet with all 5 senses, so much more important. You'll get a lot more out of that. And then if they're not quite the right one or they have possibility, I would say try to date a couple people. Try to date up to 4 or 5. If you've gotten to a place where you found 9 people worth going out with, according to Dr. Helen Fisher, your brain starts going into this idea you're continuously shopping and that you might miss something. And so you've put yourself into a bad chemical place at that time. So I would say jump off the apps. Don't do that for a little while. It's just part of the arsenal of where you can find people, but more you can do real in life places, and knowing that that's a coffee shop and that's grocery shopping and that's getting your gas. You're in real life and people are around you, and you actually can probably catch their eye and smile at somebody and have a short dialogue. Get ready to be able to invite somebody into a dialogue with you if you feel good energy from the person. And women might have to do a little bit more of putting the first step in place, whereas we used to be, especially when we were younger, guys were coming in our direction more. So it's really imperative that you understand one really fun study that's been redone time and time again. Men, when they are looking at you and checking you out, how many times do you think they've had to look in your direction, checking you out before you think, oh, I know they're checking me out?
How many? This is interesting.
Yeah. How many? If I'm asking you.
I don't know. I'm just going to guess 5 times.
Most women, it's just 2, like 1 or 2. And we're pretty perceptive. We actually have greater peripheral vision. We're the gatherers. So we see a little bit more. We can multitask better. If you thought a guy was attractive and you were checking him out, how many times do you think you'd have to look in his direction?
Oh, that's what I was thinking, like maybe 5 times. I was thinking that was the question. Sorry.
Yeah, no worries.
Yeah, like looking just so that they feel that, oh yeah, she's really looking at me.
18.
Oh, wow. That's crazy.
So I've had people do this, like replicate it in different cities. The original
awesome.
test was 15. And then in San Francisco, it went up to 18. And I think after the pandemic, if I had people do it again, it might even be more. And so women do need to be a little bit more obvious on those first steps. Yeah. So knowing that you're not chasing, you're just opening the door.
Okay.
You're opening the door, you're friendly, you're putting out good vibes, you have good energy about you. And at a grocery store, if they have something in their basket, ask about it. Hey, I was trying to get some new cereal, saw that cereal. Have the courage. My favorite quote that I give all my clients to work with is Eleanor Roosevelt's quote, do one thing every day that scares you. If you're single and you like the opposite sex, I say, do that with the opposite sex.
Okay.
Not with the intention of always having to get a date, but just knowing if I can do that, I'm raising my own internal love drugs. And part of what you're doing in that situation is trying to look like somebody when they first fall in love and they're having sex 24/7 and they just glow. Have you never noticed that? You're like, I want some of what they have.
Yes. Right.
And so the more that you can do that raising of your own internal chemistry, you can do that by exercising, you can do that by doing those scary things. You're really helping somebody else see that energy about you.
Okay, so you brought up something that I'd like to segue to, chasing. I come from this very traditional kind of mindset where I think that the woman should allow the man to chase her. What are your thoughts on that?
Again, I think in the beginning, you need to open the door. And I also think that the Me Too movement and the pandemic and just looking at phones has changed the dynamics of what is normal. So part of you getting into the relationship will be you opening the door, you starting to raise the bar for him of what works and what doesn't work by having conversations about, hey, when you open the door for me, it really makes me feel seen and honored. I really appreciated that. That's such a dying act that happens nowadays. So few guys take the moment to do that. So whenever they do something right, catch them in it and appreciate them. And then not only say thank you, but tap it into an emotion and a feeling that because they're in your presence, they're evoking. And when a guy gets a why behind something, it will more likely stick beyond the courting phase into your actual relationship. Also, a lot of gentlemen nowadays have been raised by single moms. And so they haven't had that witness of being able to understand what it means to be a gentleman and how it's internalized in the feminine. And so we will more often than not now have to do a little bit of teaching of what works for us and why. And one of the things that a billionaire that I've worked with him for a long time, this is his third final relationship. It's going smoothly, but some things were kind of hitting bumps in the road around relationship and romance. And so I had them watch romantic movies and then dialogue about what about them they liked and they didn't like and why certain things were done. And he was such a heady kind of guy that he loved that as an assignment because he would not have thought about it. And some of the things that he did think about it, we were like, wow, that's a very interesting perspective. So when he was able to understand her and the why behind she wanted certain things, he was able to then do it because we cased it in such a way that it made him a better partner. It made him a better individual in life and respecting women. And he wanted to become that. It wasn't because we were telling him to or poking him that he wasn't doing something right. We were showing him how he could become an even better person. And that was something he was evolving to.
Well, what about the beginning stages? Like you meet someone and go to dinner and, I think the guy should pick up the check. And a lot of my friends, I mentioned this on other podcasts, will put their credit card down and say, oh, I felt bad. I paid for half. Or they live in a city that's an hour away from you. And I think that the guy should drive to you at the beginning. Like he should chase you. I think it's innate in men. They want to be the hunters. And what are your thoughts on that?
I agree. And I think that if you put your credit card down right away, unless you invited him out, unless it's a birthday, unless it's a celebration of some sort that he just won a cool contract or something and you want to pick up the tab.
But like first date.
Yeah.
First dating or third date or second date.
Yeah. At least the first 3 to 5 dates, I would say it's best for a gentleman to pick up the tab because he is doing the hunting. He is doing the courting. I'm going to caveat this, if you're younger and it's really hard nowadays because dating is so expensive, you don't have to do really expensive things. You can have a really small picnic and go out. You could just have some cheese and bread and a small split of wine or not even wine. You don't have to do large dollar things if you don't have very much money, but it's the act of showing up and going, I'm creating a space. I'm holding a container for you. I can get your back is what that is saying to a woman. So it's not about the dollars. It's not about, taking me out to lobster. And unfortunately, so many women have done a disservice for this situation where they just go, it's a free meal. I can just go out and have a free meal by going on a date that has put a bad taste in a lot of gentlemen's mouths. So be mindful of who this person is. Maybe they're in a startup and they're in startup mode and they're just grinding and they have to be really frugal. Like be mindful of that and don't expect them to take you to a Michelin star restaurant. But I do believe that showing up as a man and being able to hold that space is really, really important. And it should be that. And also calling. Guys have a tendency to do things last minute, no matter what. And so if you can say, hey, I would love to be able to do something with you this weekend. If you did want to do something this weekend, this is on a Tuesday, you can choose, which of those days. When it gets closer, we can figure out what's going on. Do you mind for the woman to ask the guy that? And I think that's totally appropriate. And it's not you chasing them. It's you going, okay, I've got a busy life and I want to make sure that we're moving forward with this. And if he calls me at the last minute, 1, that doesn't feel good. And 2, that doesn't send the right signal for him for the future.
I agree. So as we wrap up, can you talk, since we're talking about this, feminine, masculine roles, can you talk about sex and what are your theories on hormones like oxytocin, vasopressin, testosterone, dopamine? When should you have sex and when should you not?
I am a big advocate for waiting, and there's about 8 different reasons, and I could go off for an hour, so I won't do that. But I recommend if anybody wants to, I think I've done a few of my office hours on that topic. But the number one thing is if you are dating for the sake of wanting somebody who could be your forever one, of all the reasons why not to, is that as they are hunting, as they are pursuing, they are increasing their baseline dopamine. Okay. Mm-hmm. Anytime you then achieve what it is that you're trying to get, your baseline, drops all the way to 0, and it doesn't feel good.
Oh, and when you get what you want, it drops to 0? Okay.
Yeah, on the other side of that. So you always have a letdown, and you go to 0, and then when it comes back, it ricochets. It's like a rubber band. It ricochets to half of what it was before it crashed. So you are setting up if you have sex right away and he only went that far, this is a little bit, if you are on audio, it's just a little bit, and then it crashes all the way down, and then it only comes back there. Well, that wasn't really exciting. Is that worth pursuing? Is that worth working hard to get into a relationship like that? Hell no. You can say, I can be intimate in different ways. I just can't go all the way. You titrate out. You have the bar. You figure out how and when. And explain to them, once we do start having sex, we're going to make up for the fact that we're waiting a little bit now, but it's well worth it for us to figure out what is going on here. And just also, when a female has sex, the most powerful, CEOs of companies that I've worked with, they start morphine and they start acting like they're doing what they think they're supposed to do for this particular guy. And you're not seeing the real them. So if the guy wants to see all of who this person is, women have a distinctive 28-day cycle. Those hormones are changing and, who they are and how they react to different things. And you don't want them to be peacocking and like posturing. You want to see all of that so you can make a really legitimate choice. Is this a good partner? These ways of finding out, the different patterns and your love is statement, they take time. You have to pull back those layers. You have to feel like you can feel safe and secure with that person to let them know all of these different things about you and what you're looking for.
Right.
So you need to know that it's so important in not having sex fast. And then the last component of that is, if you have sex early, you are setting up the rest of your relationship for your partner to potentially be more jealous, even if they're not the jealous type, to not feel as safe and secure with loyalty with you because you were easy to get. When you are mid-cycle and your luteinizing hormone is really high, he can smell that, okay? And he is going to get upset with you out of weird things. This happened to me because they sense if a guy gets too close to you or if you're being just nice to the bag boy, that something might happen. So in their chemistry, they don't trust you as much because you were easy to get. If they had to work really hard and that baseline dopamine had gone way out and then they finally got what it was, that connection with you. Yeah, the treat at the end. Then they would go, you can flirt with anybody you want during that time because I know how hard it is to get in there. and it's not going to happen very easily. And all this is going on an unconscious, subconscious level, but you're setting yourself up for such a happier, healthier, thriving relationship if you wait. And you can wait at least a month, please, 2 months, 3 months. You're seeing somebody with that whole emotional realm that they come in with being a female, and they get to see that. You get to interact with it in different ways, and it will help you have a longer, healthier, thriving relationship. So,
with that is a great way to wrap this up. Thank you, Joy. Can you tell our listeners how, I love your methodology, how they can get a hold of you and the 2 different companies that you run, how they work before we wrap up? And I will put everything in the show notes.
Yes, the website is called joyofromance.com. And on there is going to be a very fun free resource that you guys can get. And it's the master list of anti-aphrodisiacs.
Ooh.
Those things that you might be consuming or doing that are turning someone off and you didn't know it. So super important. I have written a book and done a video and used to do tons of dinner parties around aphrodisiacs, but it's really more important that you know what is an anti-aphrodisiac.
Oh, wow. That's interesting. I have to check that out.
So that, and then go to my YouTube channel because it will be launching soon. It's Joy Nordenstrom's Intelligent Love on YouTube. And with that, behind the scenes, there's over 100 videos that are private videos that people can't see that are a part of my office hours. So I have the Intelligent Love Dating and Relating Meetup group. You can go through there, or you can message me directly at my email, joy@joyofromance.com. with Intelligent Love List in the subject line, and you will get a direct email about it. It's every other Tuesday from 7 p.m. Pacific Standard Time to 8:30 p.m. I interview some great people. I also talk about all different topics, and I've been hosting that for 4.5 years, and I've only missed 5 of all of that time.
Amazing.
So, and I had COVID during 2 of those.
That's great. Well, that's great. I think the meetup group sounds really interesting. Well, it's been a pleasure, Joy. Thank you so much, and happy Valentine's Day.
Thank you. I'm so happy to have been here, and I appreciate you doing all that you do and all the energy you put into this, Tara.
Thank you. Thanks for listening to Talk with Tara. If you loved today's episode, please follow the show and share it with a friend. Stay tuned. There's so much more to talk about. See you next time.